G'day, it's Mark here from Mark My Words. Welcome back to the channel. If you've visited and you're back, welcome back. If you're here for the first time, hey, consider subscribing to this channel. On this channel, we've helped people fast track a comeback from a serious life setback. Hey, have you ever wondered how in the world am I going to get back what I've lost? Particularly if you're in your mid to late 40s, maybe 50s, and your life has come unstuck. In my case, I lost my marriage and my business at 42 years of age, and my biggest concern was, how am I going to get all, rebuild? How will I rebuild? What am I going to do? It took me 20 years to get to a certain point, lost it all, and I didn't know if, the thought of taking the next 20 years of my life to rebuild back to where I was just an overwhelming thought. And the thought of actually doing it quicker and faster than it took me the first time around really appealed to me. And so I started to think about other ways of thinking in terms of business. And it's really difficult to, when you start from zero financially, to think about, for me, I went back and got a job. I never had a job in my life. I'd been in business all my life, from 22 years of age right through to 42 years of age. And another story, but when I'd lost everything after the global financial crisis and my marriage fell apart, I had to, after a while, start to think about, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it was quite overwhelming and daunting for a while. And I started reading some great books and some things. I met a guy called Dave, who was a business owner, really successful guy. He was a neighbour, and ultimately became a friend and a coach and a mentor. And he started to not teach me anything, just ask me great questions like, if you go back and get a job, how long will it take you to get back to where you were? And I thought, man, a job. It was because I was working a job. It was like a finite income. It was a good income. I worked for some banks. It was an above average income, but I had commitments. I had child support. I had residual debt, credit card debt, personal loans, business loans that I'd had associated with the previous business that had no revenue, and that went belly up after the GFC. So I had to think about not only how was I going to meet those commitments and avoid bankruptcy, but how I was actually going to take some surplus cash flow, save it up, and hopefully, get some assets and, buy my own home again, or pay off the debts and, to create wealth. And it was an overwhelming, fearful almost thought of how I was going to do that. But got offered a job and ended up working, a few years for two of the major banks here in Australia. And it was, thank God for that, because it helped me get my feet back on track financially. But ultimately I knew to create wealth, remarried, Kate and I had this conversation around how we're going to actually do this. And it was ultimately to be back in business for ourselves. I want to encourage you today to think about, if you're not in business for yourself, what are some of the passions and interests you have that you've often thought, man, I reckon I could do that really well in a business of my own. Just a thought, okay? I'm not saying you have to start your own business, but the truth is, if you're like me and you're in your mid-40s and you're starting from a low base financially and you've got a desire to get back to where you were financially, it's going to be really difficult to do that on a savings program from a job. Ultimately, you've got to create something of value. Ultimately, you've got to create a business or an asset that has a real tangible value. And in business, obviously, the value of any business is in the capacity to generate positive cash flow. After all the expenses are paid, how much is left at the end of the day in terms of net income, and the capacity for that net income to have a scalable potential is the thing that investors and other potential business owners look for when they go to buy a business, and that is, can I buy this business and it continue to generate that revenue, and what's the potential for that revenue to grow, right? Despite or taking the original business owner out of that business, In other words, it's not reliant on one person. It's not reliant on, so for example, if you're a doctor or a music teacher and you're very skilled at what you do and you have a business and you take you out of that business, it's difficult to generate income because you're the magic, right? So how do you think about creating something which has a scalable potential? It has a saleable attractiveness to it if you do decide to sell it or exit it. And let's imagine for a moment you did do that as a side hustle. You created something as a side hustle, a business that has had an asset value, an attractive income. It generated an attractive income, which obviously was able to be generated despite of you, not because of you. And it had then a great asset value potential or saleable value that you could exit that business and generate some serious net profit to help you fast track your comeback financially. So most of us, if you look at it on a graph, if I can use this for, let's say this is income and this is time here, right? Time. Most of us start out work at 20 years of age or thereabouts. Some of us go to university and get a university degree, and we start working in that profession at 25, 26, whatever. And then we start here on a modest income. And obviously as you go up the corporate ladder, or as you continue to grow your business, if it's all reliant on you, hopefully your income grows in time. But then there comes a point, normally for most people it happens at around 40 years of age or thereabouts, where your income potential or income growth rate plateaus off. And it's because generally you hit a ceiling in your career, or the price to go to the next level, to be paid to that, you look at it and you go, the price I have to pay for this next level of responsibility is just too great. And so your boss's role doesn't excite you whatsoever because you're not prepared to pay that price, and particularly for that small amount of increased income. Or you're in your own business and you've got your own self-employed type business where you're providing a service to customers and it's all about you, and you've maxed out with how many customers you can look after in a day. Therefore, there's a limit to what you can make per day, per week, per month, per year. And so your income plateaus off, right? And then it gets to that stage where at around about 65 years of age, for most people, particularly here in this country, you get to retire. And what happens is when you retire, your income tends to fall off the cliff like that. And you then try and live on here in retirement about 2/3 of what you've found it hard to live on here prior to retirement. Right? And this is how the average life cycle goes for the average worker or self-employed type person. So what if you're at this stage in your life at 40 years of age and your income, in my case, this is what happened. My income went down to zero. So I had no revenue and lost my business and lost my marriage and lost kids and lost everything, and still had commitments financially. And that's another story, right? But I had to start thinking differently. How do I get back? How do I turn things around? And, what if you could develop a business? What if you could develop a business that, had this potential where it has this unlimited potential, where you can duplicate yourself and multiply yourself, and you could scale the business, and it ultimately had because of its scalability, and it had its potential to grow and multiply, it had a real asset value to any potential investor. And so this income, tends to grow despite of you, not because of you. And as a result of that, you could exit out of that business at 2 or 3 or 4 times what that net revenue or net profit of that business per year was. Now, I just want to throw that out to you just to challenge your thinking around, okay, to fast track your comeback financially. You're going to need to, it's going to be really difficult to do that saving money, okay? Particularly if you're in your mid-40s right now. You have to start thinking about what can I do in my spare time as a side hustle, potentially, or what can I do to transform what I'm currently doing to make it scalable despite of me, not because of me, and that might be possible, it might not be, and therefore create an asset which has real value, which you could then potentially exit in the next 2 to 5 years for a tidy sum to make sure that you end up living happily ever after financially. Now, I know it's for some of us that's a challenging thought, but it's either that or try and save your way to success financially over the next 20 odd years. You know, to know what your number is, to know what you're going to need to live happily ever after financially. What is that number? How much do you need put away? Is it $1 million? Is it 2 million? Is it 5? Or is it 10? You know, or is it 100,000? You know, if you're going to live, if you're 65 years of age and you retire and you live, say, you know, these days with medicine and with science, you're going to live possibly into your 80s and 90s. How are you going to do that? Are you going to live with this situation happen here with a potentially unlimited income, which ultimately produces, you know, time and money freedom? Or is it going to be like this, where you fall off the cliff at 65 years of age financially, a form of time and money slavery? Because, you know, freedom or slavery, what's it going to be? I mean, you know, slavery is when you can't go very far or do very much because you're restricted by what you can do financially. Now, if you're in your 40s or your 50s right now, this is something to really think about long term. Right, and challenge yourself into investing in education to learn about how to create something out of nothing in business, in something you're passionate about, hopefully, or ideally, that has a saleability, attractiveness to potential investors, and has a scalability which has potentially no limit to what it can earn. Just food for thought. And if you have any questions or queries around it, just leave them in the comments below, because obviously, you know, it's something which is challenging when you hear this type of content for the first time, particularly when you're struggling and you've had a setback. But the good news is your best days are ahead, and there are answers that you can adopt to help you fast track your mighty comeback, so that you're not in this place here where you're struggling later on in life, which is a time when you should be really enjoying life. Okay, so hey, if you enjoyed this video today, consider subscribing to this channel. My passion is to help people fast track their comeback from their serious life setback. In the descriptions panel below, I've got some content that is yours to download free. Can I encourage you to download my 10 breakthrough steps? These are the 10 breakthrough steps that I took to help me fast track my life, my comeback from my serious life setback. I encourage you to download those today free. I will ask you for your email address. Just pop it in the link, and I'll be able to email those directly into your inbox. I guarantee you, when you apply those 10 breakthrough steps, they will help you fast track your comeback. Okay? Thanks for joining me today. I hope this video's added some value to you. And until the next time, I'll see you on the next video.